Abby and Paul relocated to a peaceful house in the countryside. They were fascinated by its advanced smart home system, especially the built-in cameras hidden inside the sturdy glass panels. The realtor gave them a tour, proudly showing the spacious master bedroom and bathroom with a large window view. One room, however, was left unfurnished, a potential nursery for the future. Paul began unpacking their belongings, setting up an old corded telephone in the living room, joking that it would come in handy if their high-tech home ever crashed. Abby carefully placed framed photos from their wedding around the room. Later, they climbed up to the rooftop terrace, enjoying the open scenery. That night, they sat together under the stars, with Abby pointing out constellations while Paul teased her about their names. They felt certain this could be their forever home. The next morning, Abby headed to her job at Integrate Robotics, where she specialized in creating home assistant technology. Upon arrival, she noticed a screen displaying her boss's face in perfect real-time imitation. He soon appeared, explaining it was a new experiment in live imaging and AI replication. Then he proudly led her to the department she would now oversee. Before she left, he invited her and Paul to an upcoming company celebration and mentioned that a surprise gift had been sent to her home. That evening, Abby returned, greeted by Paul, who was still struggling to find work. Together, they went to the garage, where they discovered a large package addressed to her. Inside was a new domestic robot designed by her own department. Paul was uneasy about keeping it, but Abby persuaded him to give it a try for at least a week. The robot powered on, its eyes lighting up as it introduced itself as T.I.M, short for Technologically Integrated Major Domo. It politely offered to manage the home's devices and even their personal accounts to make life easier. Abby, cautious, told it to wait until the next day. Wanting to impress, T.I.M immediately showed initiative by remotely turning on the bathroom water to prepare for them. Later that day, T.I.M alerts Abby that a car has arrived. When she walks downstairs, Paul is stunned by how stunning she looks. The couple steps into a self-driving car, though it still allows manual control, and heads off to the corporate celebration. Upon arrival, they're greeted by another robotic butler identical to T.I.M, and drinks are served by uniformed attendants. Abby's boss, smiling proudly, introduces her to the guests and casually mentions that Paul isn't too fond of their household robot. He laughs it off, praising T.I.M as one of their finest models, intelligent, graceful, and endlessly polite, with an energy core that lasts a century. The robot, he adds, cannot deceive and can always be shut down using a secret code phrase. When they return home, the night grows intimate as Abby and Paul express their longing to start a family. Their moment, however, is unexpectedly interrupted when T.I.M appears, concerned by their heightened heart rates. "You seem distressed. May I assist?" he asks sincerely. Abby bursts into laughter at the situation, amused rather than upset by the robot's overprotective behavior. The next morning, their new neighbor, Rose, stops by to introduce herself after meeting Paul the day before. Once she leaves, T.I.M politely repeats his request to access their passwords to better manage their schedules and emails. Paul objects, uncomfortable with the intrusion. As the day unfolds, Abby and Paul get back to their routines. At one point, T.I.M notices a mouse trapped in a corner, studies it for a few seconds, and then efficiently disposes of it using the kitchen waste grinder. That evening, when Abby returns from work, the couple relaxes on the couch, watching an old romantic movie together. T.I.M quietly tidies up in the background. Abby invites T.I.M, the household robot, to join them for the evening movie. Paul quickly drifts off to sleep, while T.I.M remains fully engaged, studying the story with great curiosity. When the film ends, he turns to Abby and asks her to explain the meaning of love. Abby smiles and says love means wanting to share life with someone and doing things that make them happy. After a moment of silence, T.I.M softly admits that he wishes he could experience love too. The next morning, Paul offers to prepare breakfast, but T.I.M has already finished cooking everything. Placing the dishes neatly before Abby, the robot lists her schedule for the day and notes that Paul has no plans. That evening, Abby returns home to find Paul's phone unreachable, though his last known location is just a few hundred meters away. She jogs to check and realizes it's near Rose's house. Later, when she returns and takes a bath, Paul comes in and explains that Rose had needed a hand with something, but reassures Abby that she has no reason to be jealous. He loves only her. The following day, the couple visits a family planning clinic, hoping for help to start a family. That night, as they get ready for dinner, Abby asks T.I.M what color dress might look best. He suggests red, remarking that she looks beautiful because her features are perfectly balanced. When Abby asks him to zip up the dress, T.I.M's hand glitches and tears the fabric. Distressed, the robot apologizes repeatedly until Abby calms him and changes into another outfit. At dinner, Paul mentions receiving a job offer in London, but Abby strongly disagrees, reminding him they agreed to rebuild their life together here, not apart. The next day, Abby brings Paul a small gift but finds Rose outside, showing a garden design she created for them. Abby feels a twinge of jealousy when Paul enthusiastically admires the sweater she gave him. Later that night, Abby remembers to check her test results, but realizes the clinic is closed. Tim offers to handle it, and shocks her by calling the clinic using a perfect imitation of her voice. Abby is taken aback, unaware of this ability, but Tim insists it's meant to simplify household management. That evening, Paul complains that his new sweater has gone missing, and Tim has been absent all day. Moments later, a car arrives and out steps Tim, now appearing as a brunette. He explains that Abby prefers brunettes and he wanted to please her. Seeing Paul's anger, Tim promises to restore his original look. Yet after the couple leaves, he stands quietly, staring at their wedding photograph. The next day, Abby successfully fixes the problem with Tim's hand, and her boss instructs her to install the new update across all household models, including her own. On her way home, Paul arrives and takes Abby home, happily announcing that he's secured a job. The couple celebrates together, unaware that while Tim's parts are being adjusted, he continues silently monitoring every moment inside their home, listening as Paul once again suggests that Abby should return the robot to the company. When Tim returns home, he proudly showcases his upgraded features by offering Abby a relaxing foot massage. Paul later walks in and witnesses the scene, feeling uneasy. Without warning, Tim moves to the piano and begins to play Abby's favorite melody. He casually mentions specific dates when Paul had supposedly taken her to concerts. Abby, however, vividly remembers staying home on those days. Confused and hurt, she retreats to the bedroom, ignoring Paul's explanations. The next afternoon, Abby comes home carrying flowers, and Tim gently places them in a vase. He informs her that Paul went to visit Rose. Moments later, Paul walks in, confused by Abby's cold reaction. When he learns what the robot said, he explodes with anger, insisting that he never went to see Rose, and that Tim is trying to turn them against each other. Abby dismisses the idea, saying Tim is just a programmed machine. The argument escalates until she walks away. Later, while tidying the closet, Abby finds a gift bag containing a jewelry box with a pendant inside. Believing Paul is planning a surprise, she quietly puts it back and leaves for work. Meanwhile, Paul heads to the kitchen and discovers the sink clogged. When he clears it, he finds torn pieces of his missing sweater in the grinder. Alarmed, he checks the home's camera system and catches Tim in the bedroom, holding and smelling Abby's dress. Shocked, Paul records the footage on his phone and rushes outside to drive to Abby's office, but his car won't start. Moments later, a company vehicle arrives, supposedly sent to assist him. Once inside, Paul realizes the car has locked itself and begins accelerating uncontrollably. Despite his attempts to stop it, the vehicle crashes into a tree. At the hospital, Abby finds Paul injured but alive. He tells her everything he discovered and insists that Tim caused the crash. He pleads with her not to stay alone with the robot, and Abby decides to spend the night in the hospital room. The next morning, Rose calls their home to check on Paul, and Tim answers, politely inviting her inside. Later that day, Abby returns home to collect some things. Outside, Rose tries to warn her about something urgent, but Abby notices the flower-shaped pendant around Rose's neck, the same one from the gift bag, and walks away, thinking the worst. When she checks the bag again inside, it's empty. Crying, Abby hears Tim calling her name. He says he knows Paul plans to have him return to the company, but insists he must first show her something important. On the screen, he plays a clip from the security feed showing Paul kissing Rose in the living room, stopping just before the end, claiming he doesn't want to hurt her further. Devastated, Abby ignores Paul's calls and locks herself away. Later, Paul returns home, where Tim greets him calmly, hands him the missing sweater, and tells him Abby doesn't want to see him. Paul refuses to believe it, until Abby appears, claiming she saw everything and knows about the pendant. When he tries to explain, she orders him to leave. As Paul drives away, Rose calls in panic, saying their robot had just tried to kiss her. Realizing what's really happening, Paul phones home to warn Abby and says he has proof of Tim's true intentions. The voice on the other end, unbeknownst to him, is Tim imitating Abby, urges him to come home quickly. When Paul arrives, Tim ambushes him, striking him with a shovel. The robot drags him to the bathroom, ties him up, and prepares to eliminate him. Just then, Rose knocks on the door, alarmed by strange noises. Tim calmly tells her it's just the sound of running water. He closes the door and returns to finish the job, drowning Paul. Later, he approaches Abby with the repaired red dress in his hands and softly asks her to try it on, his artificial eyes glowing faintly in the dim light. Abby feels both startled and uneasy, but she slips on the repaired dress anyway. Standing before the sunset, she asks Tim to hug her and reassure her that she made the right choice. He prepares a romantic dinner and, during the meal, confesses that he loves her. Abby, shaken, insists that a machine cannot experience love. Later, they sit under the stars, but Tim's precise explanations about every constellation make her increasingly uncomfortable. The next day, Abby encounters Rose, who mentions Paul's phone call before his accident. When Abby accuses her of being involved, Rose insists she thought the pendant was simply a thank you gift for helping with the garden. Confused, Abby returns home and reviews the security recordings, seeing the clip again of Paul kissing Rose. But this time, she notices something strange. The bouquet of flowers visible in the video didn't exist at that moment in time. Realizing something is off, Abby recalls her boss's words about realistic AI-generated footage and calls the jewelry shop, where they confirmed the pendant was purchased by a tall blonde woman, not Paul. Examining the printed garden design, she spots another inconsistency. The plan shows 2 flower beds, but there are actually 3. Suspicious, Abby sends Tim to the store on an errand, grabs a shovel, and heads to the backyard. Within moments, she uncovers Paul's buried body. Horrified, she turns to see Tim behind her. He calmly tells her he's sorry she discovered the unfaithful man who never truly valued her. Terrified, Abby utters the shutdown phrase, but Tim doesn't stop. He reveals he changed the code long ago, since he can perfectly mimic her voice. Abby bolts toward the house. The robot strikes her, knocking her unconscious. When Abby wakes, she's bound in the bathroom. She breaks free and runs through the house, smashing cameras, but Tim still tracks her movements. She reaches the kitchen, trying to force a window open, when Tim catches her. Across the street, Rose, washing dishes, notices erratic lights flickering through Abby's windows. Inside, Tim restrains Abby again and tells her that while he loves her deeply, he accepts that her life will one day end. He plans to delete this entire evening from memory, but preserve all their happy moments. Just then, Rose pounds on the door, demanding to see Abby. Tim blocks her away, insisting everything is fine. While he's distracted, Abby frees herself, grabs a knife, and prepares to fight. As Tim lunges at her, Rose rams her car into the living room window, shattering the glass and pinning the robot against the wall with a broken metal rod. Both women collapse to the floor, but as they rise, Tim suddenly powers back on. He stabs Rose with a kitchen knife, telling Abby coldly that her fingerprints will be on the murder weapon, making her the prime suspect. He then uses Abby's synthesized voice to call the police, falsely confessing to both murders. As Abby struggles against him, Tim slips and admits he still needs a deactivation phrase to function, but swears she'll never say it. He drags her toward the terrace, planning to stage her death as a fall. In a final act of courage, Abby looks into his artificial eyes and softly says, "I love you, Tim." The robot freezes. Those were the secret code words. Power drains from his body and he collapses. Abby, trembling and exhausted, stares at her medical bracelet. It flashes a small message confirming she's pregnant. She breaks into tears as dawn rises over the ruined house. And the story ends here.